Welcome to Betrayal and Revenge. I'm your storyteller, and today I'll take you on a journey of secrets, lies, and payback. Make sure you stay with me until the very end. You won't want to miss how it all unfolds. And when it's over, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Patricia Caldwell had spent most of her adult life building bridges that only she seemed eager to cross, pouring patience and money in equal measure into a single guiding conviction. That unconditional love was an investment bound to mature, if not in dividends of gratitude, then at least in the quiet reassurance that she had done everything a mother could do. Widowed at 40, she redirected the energy once shared with her late husband into nurturing their only child, Jason, through university fees, first apartment rent, and the spiraling costs of a wedding he and his fiancée dreamed would look like a lifestyle magazine spread. By the time the final vendor invoice arrived, Patricia had written checks totaling more than the combined value of her retirement account, and the life insurance payout she had guarded like a talisman through seasons of market volatility. She assured herself the figures were irrelevant beside the glow in Jason's eyes when he unveiled the venue. A converted greenhouse draped in fairy lights that flickered like constellations caught in glass. Subtle warnings surfaced early, the kind that polite people file away under bad timing or bridal stress. Amanda, Jason's fiancée, corrected Patricia's table manners during menu tastings, remarked on the out-of-date cut of Patricia's navy dress robe, and suggested gently, always gently, that Patricia might prefer a pastel instead of deep jewel tones because jewel tones could look heavy on camera at a certain age. Patricia absorbed each comment, smoothing them under a lifetime habit of self-erasure, telling herself that every generation redrew family etiquette, and her task was to adapt with grace. She consoled herself by overcompensating. She upgraded the honeymoon flights to first class, paid the photographer's rush surcharge, so the newlyweds could post professional shots before acquaintances uploaded phone images, and offered a down payment on a suburban house the couple had visited twice. After the wedding, devotion evolved into ritualized generosity. Patricia's bank transfers arrived like clockwork on the first of every month to subsidize the mortgage. Her weekends filled with repainting guest room walls and assembling flat-pack furniture, because Jason's managerial job demanded long hours and Amanda found manual work meditative for people who enjoy that sort of thing. Patricia clipped rose canes in their garden, ironed their linen curtains, and baked sourdough loaves that cooled on marble counters while she wiped stray flour, so Amanda's spotless aesthetic endured. Each small task reinforced her private prophecy that sacrifice would cement belonging. Yet the emotional arithmetic never balanced. The more she gave, the less space seemed reserved for her in the household she had effectively underwritten. The fracture became visible the spring Jason turned 28, 3 months before their first anniversary. Patricia had financed an elaborate anniversary dinner at an exclusive riverfront restaurant, left her American Express on file, and arranged for the sommelier to present a limited vintage from the year Jason met Amanda in graduate school. She envisioned herself seated discreetly at a nearby table, ready to toast the couple before excusing herself early to let them linger in candlelight. Instead, 2 hours before the reservation, her phone buzzed with a text that felt like an audit notice on her heart's accounts. Jason wrote, without greeting or apology, that Amanda preferred the evening remain only family, and by Amanda's definition, that excluded mothers unless they were hosting in their own homes. Patricia reread the message until the screen dimmed, parsing the irony that the event she funded now defined her as surplus to requirement. Her first instinct was to call, to clarify, to remind him whose name appeared on invoices, but pride, threaded thinly through decades of restraint, held her silent. She dressed nonetheless, choosing a slate gray sheath instead of the pastel Amanda had once recommended, and drove to the restaurant car park where valet lights glimmered like distant buoys. She remained in the driver's seat, engine idling, watching couples glide under portico lanterns toward the warmth she had paid to illuminate. At precisely 8:30 she rang the maitre d', introduced herself as the cardholder who had prepaid the evening's service, and instructed him to charge all additional items to the account before shredding the slips. Gratuitous, unnecessary, final. Then she pulled away, engine humming through the hush of early evening streets, her reflection fleeting across shop fronts like a passenger trapped inside mirrored glass. That night, sleep arrived in fractured increments. Patricia's thoughts spiraled around previous transgressions she had forgiven as modern boundaries. The Christmas morning she spent alone after delivering gifts the night before so Amanda could host her parents without crowding the tree. The birthday brunch where Patricia occupied a barstool because Amanda's friends filled every seat at the communally reserved table. The ultrasound appointment for their future grandchild that Patricia learned about from a social media announcement rather than an invitation. Each memory slotted into place like mosaic shards until an unflattering portrait emerged. One in which Patricia's unwavering support had been relabeled disposable convenience. At dawn, a decision crystallized with the lucidity of frost on glass. Generosity without reciprocity was not love but subsidized neglect. An architecture built on such footing required demolition before collapse inflicted collateral damage. Patricia's training as a civil service accountant resurfaced. She printed ledgers, collated receipts, and opened a new spreadsheet. She mapped every dollar funneled into the marriage. Mortgage principal contributions, catered events, surprise maintenance costs she had absorbed without comment. The totals sprawled across the screen like unchecked expansion joints, revealing structural load dangerously skewed to one side. By mid-morning she scheduled a meeting with her lawyer, a woman who specialized in asset reclamation and elder financial abuse cases. By afternoon she retrieved the deed paperwork she had never bothered to examine closely, discovering that the house stood solely in Jason's and Amanda's names despite her down payment covering nearly 40% of the purchase price. She located her original bank drafts, each annotated gift, each issued under emotional duress cloaked as maternal devotion. She scanned them into encrypted files, titled them bluntly, Loan masquerading as Gift 123. The following week she commissioned a valuation of her lakefront cottage, her only property held free of emotional entanglement. She listed it quietly, intending to liquidate and relocate far from the suburb whose manicured hedges concealed the echo of her exclusion. The realtor asked if she was sure. Waterfront vistas seldom lost value. Yet Patricia's mind charted new coordinates beyond appraisal tables. She envisioned a city loft or perhaps a coastal townhouse near an art co-op. Spaces defined by her own preferences, not adjustments to accommodate a daughter-in-law's curated monochrome. She found solace in the crisp arithmetic of possibility. Proceeds minus relocation expenses equaled liberation capital. Still, liberation alone felt incomplete. Bridges deserve controlled detonation, so that no future traveler mistook their charred remains for a viable crossing. Patricia penned letters in looping cursive. One to Jason outlining a repayment schedule equal to the original mortgage contributions plus interest. Another to Amanda enclosing itemized invoices for wedding luxuries reclassified from gift to loan in arrears. She kept copies but did not yet send them. Precision required timing, and timing, she resolved, would coincide with the moment Amanda believed herself most triumphant. The impending gender reveal garden party Patricia had, of course, agreed to sponsor before the text nullified her place at the dinner table. Patricia marked the party date on her calendar, circled it twice, and beneath the circle she wrote a single word in block capitals, reclamation. The weeks ahead would become an exercise in patience, outwardly unchanged routine masking inner recalibration. She would deliver the catered cakes, fund the pastel balloon archway Amanda adored, and stand smiling among guests as though nothing roiled beneath satin surfaces. Then, when cameras flashed and colored confetti declared the next generation, Patricia would release her own announcement. A carefully drafted statement of financial boundaries and legal intentions that would redraw the family landscape in permanent ink. She closed the planner, exhaled slowly, and felt the tectonic plates of her life begin to realign. The betraying text had sought to exclude her from what Amanda defined as only family. Yet family, Patricia now recognized, was not a stage to which she begged entry, but an entity that existed where her integrity resided. And that integrity, she vowed, would no longer subsidize anyone else's definition of belonging. In the 3 weeks leading up to the gender reveal party, Patricia calibrated her actions with the meticulousness of a diplomat operating behind enemy lines. She attended planning meetings hosted at Amanda's kitchen island, listening attentively as themes were debated: lavender versus sky blue, tea-length dresses versus floral maxi, and volunteered for every logistical burden too mundane for Instagram, but essential to execution. She scheduled deliveries, negotiated vendor discounts, and handwrote over 70 address labels in her looping cursive that Amanda called quaint but somehow still charming. The compliments, shallow and transactional, slid across the surface of Patricia's composure like raindrops on waxed glass. She nodded politely, offered suggestions only when asked, and maintained a pleasant quiet that Amanda interpreted as compliance. In truth, Patricia was memorizing every contour of Amanda's expectations, so she could later dismantle them with strategic precision. The party, scheduled for a Sunday afternoon, would unfold on the backyard lawn of the house Patricia had partially paid for, beneath the shade of a white rental tent whose cost she covered in full. The theme was Enchanted Garden, a phrase Amanda repeated like a spell, featuring pastel lanterns, custom cupcakes with fondant bees and butterflies, and a local violinist hired to perform acoustic covers of popular love songs. Amanda's friends would arrive in color-coded dresses, coordinated down to the nail polish. Jason, predictably, deferred entirely to Amanda's taste, offering mild approvals between glances at his phone. Patricia observed silently, every detail she processed folded into the deeper architecture of her revenge. She created spreadsheets with 2 layers. One for Amanda's shared Google Drive where expenses were tracked in general terms, and a hidden one of her own, outlining every transaction Patricia had personally covered since the engagement. It included receipts for cake tastings, venue deposits, home appliance upgrades, and Uber rides for Amanda's mother during wedding week. Where entries were ambiguous, Patricia added annotations to clarify intent. Gift if genuinely offered without expectation, loan implied. If offered under emotional pressure, and loan, masked as gift. For any amount Amanda had demanded with smiles and manipulated gratitude. The latter column grew disproportionately long. Meanwhile, she reached out quietly to 2 professionals Amanda would never have anticipated: a tax consultant and a family trust attorney. From the first, Patricia confirmed that personal loans exceeding $17,000 per year were taxable unless properly documented. From the second, she learned how to restructure her will and living trust so that disbursements to Jason would be legally conditional. She followed both conversations with email summaries, saving the threads in a folder titled Clarity. The second week brought a subtle shift. Amanda began to assume authority more overtly, correcting Patricia in front of caterers, assigning her tasks like a junior assistant, and suggesting in passing that perhaps, after the baby came, Patricia might feel more comfortable visiting during pre-scheduled hours, to avoid overstimulation. The phrasing, couched in pseudo-clinical language, made Patricia's stomach lurch with cold recognition. She was being pushed further to the perimeter of a family she had once believed herself central to. First in tone, now in presence. Jason, oblivious or unwilling to confront nuance, continued to act as though nothing had changed. He thanked her for every wire transfer with a thumbs-up emoji and mentioned how grateful Amanda was for everything Mom's doing, but never once questioned the assumption that Patricia would be paying for the entirety of the party. She listened to him speak and wondered when exactly her son had become fluent in this new language of entitled detachment. Perhaps it hadn't been a single event but a slow erosion, a weathering of values over years of her silence and his comfort. The Sunday before the event, Patricia stood alone in the backyard just after dusk. The rental tent was half erected, white fabric rippling slightly in the breeze. The garden lights she had strung along the fence emitted a warm, buttery glow, casting elongated shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn. She walked the perimeter slowly, noting the subtle asymmetries. A listing planter, an overgrown hedge, a broken solar lamp Amanda hadn't noticed. The imperfections felt appropriate. They mirrored the underlying instability of the domestic tableau Amanda was curating for social media. Patricia reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded pages of her letters. One to Jason, one to Amanda, and a third addressed generically, to whom it may concern. That final letter contained her new will summary, notarized and updated, explicitly removing Jason from full inheritance and redirecting significant portions of her estate to educational funds for under-resourced children in foster care. She tucked the pages back into the envelope, resealed it, and placed it carefully inside the gift box she had chosen for the event. A large square parcel wrapped in white linen paper with a silk lavender ribbon. Amanda had insisted that all gifts follow the aesthetic, And Patricia had complied. The box would sit among the others beneath the gift arch, indistinguishable from the rest. Except this one contained no onesies or custom baby books. It contained a reckoning. The following days passed without disruption. Amanda continued planning, Jason continued smiling, and Patricia performed her duties like a stagehand preparing a set for the final act. She ordered the final round of desserts, confirmed the time of the balloon delivery, and wrote a check for the violinist's full balance. Each task was executed with a steady hand and neutral tone. No one suspected anything. But Patricia knew. She could feel the internal geometry of the moment solidifying. She had spent her life making others comfortable, smoothing edges, lowering her voice. But not anymore. This time, she wasn't just stepping back. She was stepping out, and taking everything she brought to the table with her. The morning of the gender reveal party arrived with a kind of cruel clarity, blue skies, perfect breeze, the kind of weather people call a blessing. But for Patricia Caldwell, it only meant there would be no distractions, no rain to blur the edges of what she had meticulously planned. She rose before dawn, dressed in a slate gray sheath dress that cut sharp lines across her figure, pulled her hair into a clean twist, and fastened a delicate silver watch at her wrist, its ticking no longer marking hours but counting down to a silent detonation. She packed her briefcase with precision. Inside, printed letters, debt ledgers, receipts for mortgage payments, wedding expenses, furniture upgrades, home maintenance fees, all annotated, all dated, all legal. Beneath the folder lay a square white gift box tied with a soft lavender ribbon. Amanda had insisted that all gifts follow the color palette. Patricia had agreed, though inside this box was no baby blanket or teething toy. This gift was not for the child. It was for the adults who mistook her kindness for eternal credit. By 9 a.m., the rented tent had begun to rise in the backyard. The same backyard Patricia had landscaped and funded. Vendors bustled under the hum of extension cords and clinking glassware. Florists arranged overflowing centerpieces of hydrangeas and peonies. A string quartet tuned their instruments under the shade of the white canopy. Servers unloaded boxes of miniature quiches and chilled spritzers, all billed to Patricia's name. Amanda was nowhere to be seen yet. Her entrance, according to the itinerary, would happen after the guests had arrived, when the lighting was just right for the photographer and the pastel decor fully on display. In her absence, Patricia managed logistics, directing deliveries, checking placement, confirming the allergy list with the caterer. She moved through the event like a concierge, invisible in her effectiveness, essential in her execution. She knew this role well. She had played it for years. By 11, the guests began arriving in soft-colored linen and pastels. Amanda's friends, polished and curated, greeted one another in high-pitched tones, marveling at the garden setup, the matching glassware, the enchanted aesthetic. No one asked who paid for it. No one noticed the woman at the edge of the patio, quietly adjusting the champagne flutes, or rerouting the DJ's extension cable. Jason mingled among his college friends, laughing freely, beaming with pride. He wore the contentment of a man whose life had been built without lifting a single beam. Amanda made her grand entrance at exactly 11:55 a.m., wearing a flowing cream maternity gown cinched below the bust with satin. Her golden hair curled perfectly at the shoulders, lips glossed to shine. Around her, guests circled like satellites, offering compliments, coups, and camera flashes. Patricia watched from a distance, her gift box resting at the base of the ornately stacked present table. She'd placed it front and center. The schedule flowed as planned. Violinists playing acoustic covers, a catered brunch with color-coordinated macarons and edible flowers, a custom photo wall where guests posed holding signs that read, "Only Family," in looping cursive. Patricia lingered on that phrase. It was the same phrase Jason had used in his text, word for word. What Amanda had posted in a story draft that morning, visible for a fleeting moment on a shared tablet left unlocked. Only Family. At 12:30 p.m., the music softened into a romantic instrumental. Amanda clapped her hands, calling everyone to gather near the grand white balloon arch inside the largest balloon. Hidden confetti would reveal the baby's gender when popped. Guests surrounded the archway, camera phones ready, drinks lifted in anticipation. Jason counted down. Amanda smiled through perfect teeth. 3, 2, 1. A loud pop, and pink confetti burst into the air like sugar dust, raining down over the crowd. Cheers erupted. People clapped, squealed, hugged. Amanda threw her arms around Jason's neck, eyes wide with glee. The violinist launched into a crescendo. And then over the sound system, a different voice began to speak. Patricia. She held the microphone she'd been carrying all morning, previously excused as being helpful with announcements. But the audio feed wasn't linked to a single speaker. It broadcast through every sound pillar wired to the tent, to the outdoor patio, to the side garden where Amanda's parents were sipping sparkling water under parasols. The room didn't fall silent instantly. It took several seconds for people to register what they were hearing. Patricia began by thanking everyone for attending. She acknowledged the beauty of the event, the joy of new life, and how honored she was to support her son and daughter-in-law as they stepped into parenthood. Then she shifted. Calmly, methodically, she detailed her financial contributions over the past 4 years. Wedding bills, home down payment, furniture, vacation accommodations, monthly cash transfers. She read aloud from printed receipts, naming each dollar figure like clock chimes. She explained that each of these were gifts only in name, offered under the belief that she was investing in a family that saw her as part of their future. But recent communications, specifically, the text that read, "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only family," had clarified for her that she was in fact not family. And so, with that clarity, she had decided to reclassify those gifts as no-interest loans, now due for repayment. Jason, pale, made his way forward, but she held up one hand. Amanda followed him, stunned, eyes darting to the guests who had gone quiet. The quartet stopped playing. Even the children paused in their movement. Patricia continued. She opened the gift box on the table and removed the folder inside. She held up a notarized document that included an updated trust, naming several nonprofits and omitting Jason entirely. The crowd audibly reacted. She offered Jason and Amanda a sealed envelope that included a repayment schedule and formal notice of her withdrawal from all future financial support. The final statement echoed with the clarity of law, not emotion. "If I am not family, then my assets shall not be family assets. Let this be the beginning of true independence, for all of us." She stepped down from the mic, placed it gently on the stand, and walked toward the edge of the garden. No one followed. Guests whispered. Cameras lowered. Amanda stood frozen. Jason, still holding the envelope, looked like a man realizing he had just lost not a safety net, but the very ground beneath his feet. Patricia passed the tent poles, crossed the lawn, and exited through the side gate. The valet attendant handed her keys in silence. She opened the door, settled into the seat, and pulled away from the house she had helped build but would no longer enter. In her rearview mirror, the pastel balloons bobbed gently in the wind, beautiful, weightless, meaningless. Ahead of her, a city skyline, open time, and finally, the beginning of a life not spent holding up everyone else's. The aftermath of Patricia's speech at the gender reveal party rippled through the air like a bomb blast muffled by velvet. Guests lingered awkwardly after her departure, sipping warm spritzers and whispering in cautious tones. The string quartet resumed briefly, then stopped for good. Amanda retreated to the master bedroom under the pretense of needing rest, but not before she shattered a glass on the marble countertop. Jason stood motionless near the dessert table, envelope still in hand, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. But Patricia had not delivered her final blow yet. That had only been the beginning. The following morning, an official notice arrived at Jason and Amanda's door via certified mail. Inside, a formal repayment demand drafted by her attorney, complete with itemized contributions, deadlines, and legal consequences for noncompliance. The document left no room for emotional appeal. There were no "I feel" statements. Only facts. Dates. Numbers. Evidence. The sum total exceeded $168,000. It included mortgage contributions, the wedding fund, the cost of a honeymoon suite in Santorini, car repairs, interest-free emergency loans, and even the security deposit for Amanda's boutique business. An enterprise Patricia had funded when a bank declined Amanda's application due to lack of income history. Patricia's financial backing had not just supported their lifestyle, it had made it possible. And now it came due. Within the packet was also a second document, a cease and desist letter warning Amanda not to misrepresent Patricia's involvement in their lives to mutual acquaintances, especially online. Patricia had seen the posts, captioned smiles that excluded her by name, but included her in implication. Family who loves us unconditionally, Amanda had written under a wedding photo that Patricia had paid to have printed in metallic foil. That narrative was now terminated. The legal paper made it explicit. No further use of her name, image, or likeness in any personal brand promotion. The reaction came quickly, as Patricia had anticipated. Jason called 6 times. She declined each one. She received 2 voicemails. The first, stammered confusion. The second, pleading layered with betrayal. He accused her of destroying his image in front of people who respected him. Patricia listened in silence and deleted both without reply. She understood now that Jason did not fear the loss of their relationship. He feared the loss of comfort. Amanda sent an email, curiously polished and passive-aggressive, hinting at emotional damage and potential countersuits. Patricia forwarded it directly to her lawyer, who responded with a single sentence. If they respond again, we proceed with small claims court and breach of oral contract. Word spread faster than Patricia expected. Within a week, her sister-in-law called to ask if the stories were true. Neighbors left flowers on her porch, silent affirmations. An old friend from her church group reached out to say, "You did what most women only dream of." Patricia responded with a polite thank you and nothing more. She wasn't interested in applause. She was interested in repair. The true beauty of the plan wasn't in its drama, but in its reach. She had moved her assets into a living trust 3 months prior. Her will had been updated, removing Jason as primary heir and replacing him with 2 charitable organizations and a scholarship fund in her husband's name. Even if Jason tried to reconcile, there was nothing left to inherit. His name had been carved out with surgical precision. She listed her lake cottage and sold it for above market price. The funds allowed her to relocate to a downtown high-rise with concierge service, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a private balcony overlooking the river. It wasn't a palace. It didn't need to be. It was hers. No one else's voice echoed in the hallway. No one else's schedule determined what filled her refrigerator or calendar. There was silence. And freedom. And both were priceless. The most poetic part came 2 months later. Amanda's business, facing mounting expenses and no longer able to secure low-interest backing, folded. A quiet closing. A blank storefront. Jason's income, once enough when bolstered by Patricia's unseen safety net, could no longer sustain their lifestyle. Their home went up for sale. The listing photos still featured the backyard, the tent, the floral wall, the faint glimmer of champagne, taken the day everything fell apart. They did not reach out again. Not formally. Not directly. But Patricia received one more voicemail from Jason. He sounded tired. No rage. No begging. Just a single sentence. "I didn't know how much you were holding up until you let go." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Justice didn't always come in the form of courtroom victories or viral speeches. Sometimes it came in monthly invoices, in removed names from legal documents, in the slow, irreversible collapse of illusions sustained by someone else's sacrifice. Patricia hadn't destroyed anything. She had simply stopped paying for it. In the months that followed the party and its aftermath, Patricia Caldwell found herself moving not only through different rooms and streets, but through a fundamentally altered relationship with the world around her. What had once been defined by obligation and repetition now unfurled in wide, deliberate movements, as if life had shifted from script to improvisation, and finally, she could breathe without asking permission. Her new apartment overlooked the river from the 23rd floor. It wasn't grand in square footage, but the ceilings soared, and the east-facing windows caught the morning light in long golden slabs across the hardwood floors. She furnished it with soft tones and clean lines, choosing each piece slowly, intentionally. There were no pastel throws to please Amanda's Instagram aesthetic, no faux vintage details meant to echo a house style she'd been subtly mocked for. Everything here was hers, bought with her own money, placed by her own hand, reflective of no one's preferences but her own. She joined a ceramics studio 2 blocks away. At first it was just to keep her hands busy. Something meditative to replace the endless lists and unpaid labor she'd once built her weeks around. But soon, the rhythm of spinning clay beneath her fingers began to stitch something together in her that had long been threadbare. She shaped bowls wide and imperfect, deliberately asymmetrical. She began walking the neighborhood in the early morning, discovering little cafes and flower stands she'd never noticed when her world revolved around suburban chores and text messages from her son. She didn't block Jason's number. She didn't need to. He stopped calling after the third month. Amanda never reached out again. Patricia had received a copy of the home's public listing through an automated alert. Price reduced twice. Photos now updated to show an empty nursery. There had been no baby shower post, no gender reveal reel. Patricia suspected the social media pages had been quietly taken down, their curated narrative no longer marketable. The silence suited her. Some days the silence was heavy. It settled around her shoulders during the hours she once spent driving to their home, buying groceries she wasn't allowed to store in their fridge, folding blankets that no one thanked her for washing. But the weight was honest now. It didn't come laced with humiliation. Didn't lean on her spine until she bent beneath it. It simply reminded her of everything she no longer owed. She kept a framed photo of Jason on the side table. College graduation, before Amanda, before the soft dimming of his voice around her. She didn't hate him. She wasn't sure she even blamed him entirely. He had adapted to the world she made easy for him. It was her silence that taught him entitlement, her reflex to give that trained him not to ask. That understanding didn't excuse him, but it released her. Anger had no place in this new phase. There was only clarity. Patricia's lawyer followed up every few weeks, sending her status updates on Jason's partial repayments. He had, after the initial shock, begun paying the minimums required by the legal schedule. There were delays, excuses, but there were also deposits. Slow, reluctant accountability that crept into his ledger like unwelcome light. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about restoring the truth. That nothing she gave had ever been free, and nothing he took had ever gone unnoticed. In early autumn, Patricia hosted a dinner for 3 women from her ceramics class, divorced, widowed, quietly rebuilding their own lives. They brought wine and stories, and by the time dessert was cleared, they were laughing too loud for the narrow walls to contain. One of them asked about her son, gently, the way women ask when they know there's a landmine under the question. Patricia smiled and answered honestly. "He's finding his way," she said. "And I'm finally on mine." After they left, she stood at the window with a cup of tea, watching the city dim into quiet constellations. No balloons. No violin music. No carefully worded invitations. Just light, movement, and space. It struck her how rarely she had ever looked at a skyline without wondering who needed her, where she had to be next, what was owed to whom. Now, for the first time, no one was waiting. And that emptiness was not loneliness. It was freedom. She picked up a piece of mail on the counter, an unsolicited letter from a retirement community in Maine, with glossy photos of coastal porches and poetry readings. She tossed it in the recycling. She wasn't retreating. She wasn't downsizing. She was reclaiming. And from here on out, everything would be on her terms. She didn't say goodbye to the past. She didn't need to. It had ended exactly as it should have. Not with apologies or reconciliations, but with the simple, clean click of a door closing behind her, and no footsteps following. Thank you for listening to this story until the very end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to Betrayal and Revenge, give us a like, and hit the bell so you won't miss new tales. Share your thoughts in the comments. I value your feedback. See you in the next stories of Betrayal and Revenge.